They don't hand you the keys to a TIE Specter. You gotta earn it. I'd been flying for the UC Navy for 12 years before I got the call to join SY-920 as a test pilot. And when they briefed me on their next project, I knew my life was about to change. Project Archangel. That's what they called it. A next-generation starfighter program so classified, most of the fleet thinks it's a rumor. Even some of the staff here at SY-920 don't know about it. But I do, and I get to fly it. The TIE Specter isn't like anything else in the UC arsenal. The cockpit hangs between 4 reinforced pylons, each of them fixed to high-output solar energy collectors. They feed power directly into an Eta-2 grav reactor, keeping every system primed, no matter how hard you push it. And the weapon systems? There's nothing like it. 4 LS-9 laser cannons for precision strikes. 4 Mark III FS pulse cannons when you need raw stopping power. And 4 RF-3 rotary ballistic repeaters that ensure the job gets done. The TIE moniker comes from its twin ion engine assembly. The first time you light it up, you can feel the acceleration in your chest. It'll pin you back in the seat, and it'll keep you there until you decide otherwise. She moves like nothing I've ever flown before. It's like she knows what you're thinking before you do. Tight turns, clean rolls, zero hesitation. Only a handful of us pilots will ever fly a TIE Specter. That's the way it should be. Some ships are built for the fleet. This one is built for the elite. The TIE Specter doesn't announce itself, but it decides when the battles end.
Welcome aboard.
Spectre 1, report back to SY-920 for maintenance. Spectre 1, you're cleared for Docking Bay 94. Spectre 1, perform ship diagnostics. Spectre 1, diagnostics complete.
Alright shipwrights, welcome to another LEC build. Got another Star Wars inspired ship for y'all today, and it's called the TIE Specter. First, let's get into a little bit of ship lore. The TIE Specter is an elite space superiority fighter and among the first designs to emerge from Project Archangel, a classified next-generation starfighter program conducted at the United Colonies SY-920 Starstation. Developed in secrecy with LEC, the TIE Specter was purpose-built to defend SY-920's airspace, intercepting and neutralizing unauthorized traffic attempting to breach the Luyten System. Given the highly classified nature of SY-920, only the UC's most decorated ace pilots are cleared to operate the TIE Specter. Okay, so when it comes to TIE fighter design styles, I've always been a fan of the sharper, arrow-shaped wings of the TIE Interceptor, and I've been wanting to try my hand at a similar build. Of course, after seeing that awesome TIE Avenger prototype in Andor Season 2, building this ship was pretty much a guarantee. And so the TIE Specter is my take on the infamous twin ion engine ship design. At 20 by 16 meters, the TIE Specter would be larger than any other TIE variant in the Star Wars universe, but for Starfield, this would be considered a micro build, or a tiny ship, and it's definitely the smallest ship that I've built to date. Altogether, this ship will cost just over 2 million credits to build. It sounds like a hefty number, which makes sense for the prototype nature of this ship. However, a majority of this budget is tied to the weapons and the engines. Lililiilillil aerospace components are some of the most expensive items in this game, and there's 2 different sets of weapons, with 4 each on this build alone, along with a pair of engines that I added at the last minute. Otherwise, the ship itself, without any weapons and using the Avenger engines, would cost around 117,000 credits. So almost 1.8 million is tied to the weapons alone. And since weapon selection is always a user preference situation, you can cut the overall price to build this by a significant margin just by choosing different weapons. Keep in mind, the only paid mod being used here is Falkland Systems for one set of weapons, so if you're on Nexus, you'll have to choose a different set for at least one of the weapon slots anyways. That being said, I have to mention that credit for this build goes to Reddit user Lee, because most of this design is taken from his TIE-inspired build that he posted a few months ago. But I've made my own modifications to his version to differentiate it a bit, and to avoid any interior clipping. Also, since I don't have the Micro Modules mod, additional changes were necessary to create this without any errors in the shipbuilder. Lee, or Lee-L, is another master shipbuilder within the Starfield shipbuilding community whose original designs are some of the cleanest that you'll see. From his meme builds to his actual ships, this dude repeatedly does things that I didn't even think were possible in the game. I highly recommend checking out his ships, and I've linked his profile and his YouTube page in the description. Back to the build, the 2 main mods featured are Antares Star Foundry, which is a free mod by Disquell that brings in a ton of new wing shape parts as well as some component parts like engines and a new cockpit. A lot of these parts fit the Star Wars design language, so if you ever want to try building a Star Wars inspired ship, Antares Star Foundry should be one of the first mods that you look at. The other featured mod here is Crimson Fleet Rearmed by Flight Controller. This is another free mod, and I'm using one of the custom cockpits and the elevator bay lift provided for this build. Crimson Fleet Rearmed also features some cool weapons and cylindrical halves that are great for building a TIE Bomber style build, which is something I'll probably try for a future video. Now, if you have micro modules, you definitely should be using the mag drive engines from that mod in place of the engines that I use for this build, because those engines remove landing thrust requirements. Without micro modules, I was forced to use the one-of-a-kind Omnidock at the bottom of the ship, which is a docker that also has landing thrust. And because that docker has to be on the bottom of the ship, landing bay options are very limited. So, with micro modules, the best option would have been to use a one-of-a-kind screen door landing bay module at the bottom of the ship, and then you can add a docker of your choice on top of the ship. Without micro modules, there are 3 options, but all of them have their own caveats that you need to consider. The discrete option is to use the one-of-a-kind Omnidock bottom with that same screen door module merged into it. But the caveat here is you won't be able to see the prompt to enter the ship from the ground. So the only way to enter your ship is to fast travel directly to it or enter via the docker when the ship is docked in space. That's going to be pretty inconvenient if this is your daily driver. Option 2 is to use the one-of-a-kind screen door, but with a ladder instead of the standard screen door. But since this ladder doesn't retract in flight, it sticks out like a sore thumb when you're flying the ship around. If the ladder actually retracted on takeoff, this would be the best option in general, but since it doesn't, there's just no way I'm going to be using this. The last option is to use the fleet manufactured payload elevator bay, which to me presents the best compromise. It sticks out from under the Omnidock enough so that you can see the prompt to enter the ship from the ground, and since it retracts, it's more discreet than having a ladder sticking out from under the ship. The only caveat is, the bay lift platform is a pretty large square platform, and it's still visible from underneath the ship, but that's something that I can live with. This section of the build is in the beginning of the guide portion of the video, so you can decide early on how you want to go about this. But if you don't have micro modules, my best advice is to follow what I do. And again, if you have micro modules, you should merge a docker on top of the ship so you can place a one-of-a-kind screen door on the bottom. Micromodules is available on Creations for Xbox players, but for PC players, the only way to download Micromodules is through Nexus. At the moment, I'm still using just Creation mods because I'm trying to keep my ship builds accessible between Xbox and PC players, and so this guide will be navigating the best way to get around Micromodules. Like I said earlier, this ship sits at 20 by 16 meters, so it's a very small build for Starfield standards, and this guide will go by pretty quickly. If you're an experienced builder, you're gonna have no problems at all. For novice builders, you're gonna learn a neat trick with this build that will help you become a better ship builder overall. But always remember, if you have any questions or if you get stuck anywhere, feel free to reach out to me in the comments. Alright, if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I know I tend to say this for each new build, but this one is definitely becoming one of my favorites. It's inspired me to try some other TIE variants in the future, so if you like this one, let me know which other ones you would like to see in the comments. My next Starfield build is going to be a special one. It's basically the opposite of this TIE Specter build because it's another Class M capital ship, and I'm really liking the way the ship and the trailer are turning out. I think it's going to be pretty epic. I haven't run into any bugs or issues with the ship, so I think the main problems that I had with the Resurgence build were mainly due to the save just being too old. I'm still tinkering and fine-tuning the design, so it won't be ready for at least another week or two, but my next upload will be a No Man's Sky build anyways, and then I'll follow that up with this Class M ship. Speaking of No Man's Sky, my next ship build is going to be another viewer request as well, so stay tuned for that. If you're new to the channel, I do have a shipbuilding Discord, though my small community is mainly there for Starfield. But I do have a channel for No Man's Sky builds and content, so you're all welcome to join. The link is in the description. As always, feel free to reach out to me in the comments if you have any questions or build requests, or if you just want to chat all things Starfield and No Man's Sky shipbuilding. This is Lindan, signing off. See you in the Starfield.